Use the soul of this crossbreed bastard child and antithesis to all life. Jesus Christ, they went really hard on Priscilla. Dark Souls, the foundation that propelled FromSoft into gaming's holy cow. God tier level design and combat that's good most of the time but becomes janky or outright broken in certain situations. And a story so interesting and open to interpretation that 13 years later people are still debating the endings, even though the sequels made the endings pointless. The game had the reputation of being incredibly hard, and so the first time I played it, about 10 years ago, I had 2 friends play it with me, and they did everything for me. And I could sit back behind their competence like a coward and gaslight my brain into thinking I was an actual Souls player. I was less than dirt, even beneath magic users. But I have rectified that now, gone back and redeemed myself, playing the game and beating it by myself, only summoning a player once, because fuck Nero and the Tomb of the Giants. Dark Souls is a unique game, even among the other Souls games. I would argue that the later Souls games have better gameplay, but Dark Souls 1 is still worth playing, to see where it all began, and for the amazing level design. Let's plunging attack right into it, like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Vagina. Premise. It started with the Age of the Ancients. Time stood still. The dragons ruled and they were straight chilling.
Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
With fire came 4 boss souls. One for Nero, Lord of the Dead, one for the Witch of Isolith, Gwyn, Lord of Light, and one for the furtive pygmy, progenitor of humanity, and then we never heard about him again. Those first 3 were not straight chilling and started a war with the dragons, that they won when noted book reader and sex deviant Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own kind. Dragons no longer rule, gods rule now in the land of Lordran. But that all happened a long time ago. Fire is fading and humans have been cursed with a dark sign, which makes them unable to die and start to become weird zombie things. You are one of them, locked in a cell in the undead asylum, but prophecy speaks of a chosen undead who will leave the undead asylum and link the fire, renewing the fire and extending its age. Gameplay. Combat, is it good? Yes. Moving on. Okay, no. The attacks feel good to hit and reliably go where I expect them to go based on my inputs on the controller. The controls felt like a natural extension of me from the moment that I started the game. And there's a great variety of weapons with a great variety of movesets, meaning you are very likely to find a moveset that feels just right to use. And for every enemy, in theory, there would be a best weapon to use, and that weapon is the Greatsword. The solution to all of life's problems. Extremely good range and extremely good damage, and hits multiple enemies. And the running slam is probably the most satisfying attack I've seen in a video game. It's also a Berserk reference, like the thrusting attack that Guts used on the child in the movie. The trade-off for that in theory is that it's slow, except it's not that slow, and the enemies are already pretty slow, so I never felt punished for its slowness. Plus it pairs extremely well with a good shield and heavy armor. Heavy armor will grant you damage reduction and high poise, which means you don't get staggered or stun locked, the most annoying mechanic in these games. And the shield will block most of the damage, and the amount that gets through gets reduced. So after the enemy does his attack, you will have a big window to do your attack. Isn't turn-based combat just great? Sometimes you won't even take damage if you just walk around them. Their attack won't hit you and then you do your hit. Or you get to see how janky this game is. Look at this horrific big fat piece of shit. He's just gonna fuck you up. Backstabs. When people call this game janky, that's what they mean. They are extremely easy to do and trivialize most of the game. My approach to playing these games is to exploit the weaknesses of enemies. And most of the time, that weakness is their crinkly ankles. They don't allow their bodies to turn around fast enough to keep up with me side strafing to their back. So, they cannot prevent me from slapping their ass with my big black sword. My BBS, if you will. Sure, I did use a straight sword for a time and it does the job well enough, but it can't match the satisfaction and range of the BBS. Penis. Shield up and side strafe works on bosses sometimes too, but they will have an attack to force a reaction out of you, like the Asylum Demon AoE, and some attacks go in such a wide arc and do so much damage that too much damage will go through your block and break your block, leaving you vulnerable. That's where dodging comes in. When you roll for some amount of seconds, you are invulnerable to damage. The amount can change depending on how heavy you are. With all that heavy armor I wore to reduce damage, I would fat roll, which means less invulnerability frames. iframes. And just look at the fat roll. You just know you are in for a bad time when you do that. I said that I would fat roll, but I don't, because I pump numbers into endurance, which makes me better at carrying all that heavy armor and lets me at least mid-roll, keeping a lot of the iframes. Havel's ring also helps me deal with the heaviness. The reason I do all that work for the roll is because rolling through an attack and taking no damage is immeasurably satisfying. I'm convinced that people mainly keep playing these games for the dodge roll high. The only flaw with rolling here is that you can only do it in 4 directions, instead of any direction in a 360-degree radius. This can cause you to roll somewhere you didn't intend to. The parry. In theory, you hit the parry button right before an enemy attack and that will put them in a vulnerable state, and you can do the equivalent of a backstab to the front. But I never did these. I never really tried and didn't feel the need to. And the risk for it is a little too high due to the limited healing, and the timing on it has always been difficult for me in these games. Sekiro is my favorite FromSoft game, by the way. Forward light attack. It's actually good here. It was the bane of my existence in Demon's Souls, but here I love it. Instead of doing it accidentally all the time, I did it intentionally on occasion. Like Lautrec, the yurt of this game. Spoiler alert, Lautrec will kill the most important person to you in Firelink Shrine, unless you kick him down to Blight Town. An important aspect of this game is the stamina management. How much stamina you have is constantly on the top of your mind. Relief when it's high, but soul-crushing anxiety when it's low. No stamina and you can't attack, and your block will break when hit. Rolling also needs stamina. It's the most important thing about combat and you constantly need to keep track of it, which adds to the test of skill. In a smaller way, the healing also does this. It's a limited resource you have to manage, and since healing locks you into a vulnerable animation, you have to learn when to heal. Learn good positioning. Looking for cover to heal and good footing to fight. I was constantly thinking about positioning. In short, combat is tactical. Magic. In Demon Souls I felt it was necessary because magic was so strong and melee so weak. But here, melee feels far stronger and far better to use. And that's probably down to how rarely you're fighting in cramped spaces. Here I used magic as a utility to get aggro on enemies, or to pick off the weaker enemies. I also used a bow for that. The enemies at Firelink Shrine are a good example of using magic to deal with annoying enemies, especially the one on the stairway, because melee combat with him can make me fall to my death. And the bow is the MVP of Sans Fortress, because I can shoot those lightning snake sluts and make them fall to their deaths, and then run through the traps in peace. I enjoyed using ranged as a utility here, and it was great that it was not a necessity, but magic is still very strong if you wanna go for that. Dark Souls offers you great freedom in the build you wanna make. The combat in Dark Souls feels great to control, and the challenge of the game, mainly found in bosses, gives you satisfaction because you feel the improvement of your skills with these controls. Improvement and skill expression is one of the primary reasons why people enjoy these games. But I'd say when it comes to combat, Dark Souls 1 is the easiest. Granted, I've only played Demon Souls and the early part of Dark Souls 2 recently now, so most of what I'm comparing to is my memory. But 1v1 fights with enemies and bosses are stupid easy. With wait for enemy attack and punish will work for almost everyone. Add the backstab spam and then it's a joke. The main challenge comes when there are multiple enemies because you have to juggle their attack patterns and line them up perfectly so that you don't take damage. And with a limited healing in this game, you really don't want to take damage. That's why I played carefully and patiently, and the game rewarded me for that. For normal enemies, I couldn't tell you a single enemy that was particularly hard by itself. All the tough ones could be exploited to make them go down easy, except maybe the crystal golems. And the weaker ones are only scary in a group, but they go down easily enough. The challenge of the game can be negated by going through the game slowly and patiently, luring enemies into a weaker position. The challenge only comes in a few bosses and a bit of memory game with a level design. I'll talk about those later. Despite how easy the game is, most of the time it's still very fun and very satisfying, because you feel skillful and powerful, and I was always active. When to attack, where and how to fight. It's a game where you have to think, and have good reflexes, and that's why it's good, even if it felt easy. But maybe it was easy for me because I'm too familiar with these games. It was still fun anyway. PvP. I have never liked PvP in these games, and that can be blamed squarely on Dark Souls 1. I never had a good experience with it. It was always very laggy and players would get backstabs on me when they shouldn't be able to. And it just sucks. It highlights the worst aspects of combat here, stun locking and bad hitboxes. If you enjoy PvP, that's great for you, but you're wrong for that, objectively. If I have the option, then I play Souls games offline, just to avoid PvP. PvP is a disruptive, annoying thing instead of a fun event. It could maybe have been good with better netcode or whatever. Level design. Bracket's first name, Miyazaki, is a weird guy. Those things you hate in video games, the things that annoy the hell out of you, he likes them. As a result, this game is full of them. A swamp that slows you down and poisons you while you're in it. This bridge that moves when you move. A fortress full of traps you have to avoid while also fighting snake people. An underground city full of ghosts you can only kill when you use a certain consumable. Or how about the pitch black cave where you can't see shit and get attacked by giant skeletons? Is this fun? No. But is it satisfying? Yes. Getting this challenge of environmental obstacles and enemy placement that can frustrate the fuck out of you to the point that you wonder if it's even worth it anymore, and then figuring it out. Learning an optimal route through Blighttown or Sense Fortress. The perfect places to take out enemies. How to use the environment against them. Familiarizing yourself with a level so that you become comfortable fighting in it. This is where the satisfaction comes from. Learning and getting better. Watching yourself grow. Being in a fucked situation and using your brain and reflexes to get yourself out of it. Being challenged and winning. Blighttown sucks, and that's why it's good. Dark Souls is about the challenge, and the levels themselves are a huge part of the challenge. But sometimes those challenges aren't really challenges and they're just tedious. The ghosts in New Londo aren't really a challenge, you just have to make sure that the transient curse is still affecting you and then waiting for them to get out of a wall so you can hit them. Being forced to go through the Tomb of the Giant slowly because it's so dark, tedious. Walking across an invisible bridge that you have to wait for snow to fall on so you can see it before you go fight an incredibly easy boss. Tedious. Putting on a ring so you can run through lava for 10 minutes where nothing happens. Tedious. What I've been telling you about is the second half of the game, and people call that second half a significant drop in quality. And yes, it is. All the areas before that point were expertly made, providing a good combat and environmental challenge. They were frustrating, sure, but you were active. It wasn't boring. The later half is sometimes. And it feels unfinished. The best argument for that is that the only enemy in the lava is a butt monster. Okay, for the most part, level design gives you a good challenge, but that doesn't justify calling it god-tier level design. So, here it is. Interconnected. It's the Dark Souls 1 buzzword, and every Dark Souls video legally needs it in the script at least once. What it means is, shortcuts and levels are connected to each other in multiple ways. Okay, this is hard to explain, and I'm not a YouTube essayist that talks like this, so I don't know the big fancy words that would explain this in a smart way. So bear with me. You'll be going through levels and exploring for like 20 minutes to an hour, decide to explore a little off the beaten path, and that will open a door, or elevator, and somehow you're right back where you started. That's the shortcut. And then the levels are connected to each other and to themselves in multiple ways. Areas are rarely isolated and fit in the world naturally and make sense. You have multiple paths you can take to get to where you need to go, multiple routes. And this is an opportunity for knowledge expression. Remembering all these weird paths and finding the optimal route. And it rewards exploration, because you might find a shortcut that skips the worst part of Blighttown, or a really good item. Your upgrades for healing, weapons and armor mostly come from exploring the levels, and you often find items that are really good against the boss of the level. Exploration is really rewarding because of the shortcuts that can make your life substantially easier, and you could even just suddenly find an entire new level. You will constantly be in amazement at how they connected everything and how they hid areas from you. Like the hidden walls. If in like 40 to 60 years, the dementia-ridden olds in the nursing homes or hitting walls with their canes, then you know who to blame. Everything looks good and the levels can vary from scary to disgusting to beautiful and very strange. Like looking into the mind of a deranged genius Westaboo. The level design is brilliant and a joy to explore, and almost impossible to properly explain without spoiling or dramatically lengthening the video, neither of which I wanna do. Which is why I have rewritten this chapter and entire script like 3 times. Until I realized that it's enough to say, level design is amazing, the sense of wonder is awesome, it's really creative and a joy to explore. Bosses. Most games don't get a chapter dedicated to bosses, but FromSoft really needs it, because the bosses are the most memorable and iconic parts of this game. And I want to keep track of the evolution of boss design through the years. So what's the boss design like here? Well, to give you an idea of difficulty, I don't think there is a single boss here that I had to take more than 2 tries for, with most of them going down in the first attempt. But hey, this is my second playthrough. I'm gonna focus more on the noteworthy bosses since this is already longer than I'd like. Most of the demons are just bait out an attack and then you attack, or get to a high place to do a jumping attack. They are fun enough, but really easy once you know what they do, which, sure, is true for the rest. But the movesets for these are easier to deal with. There are only 3 bosses that I would actually describe as hard. Ornstein and Smo, Artorias and Manus. Everyone else is easy if you pay attention and wait for an opening. For ONS, I summoned Solaire, because boss fights with multiple enemies are bullshit, and most of the time are more frustrating than fun. And I really like summoning NPCs, it makes the world feel less empty and less lonely. It feels like I'm not just alone on this adventure, and it's awesome to square up with my NPC boys. But summons can trivialize bosses, like Quailag and the Iron Golem thing. If I didn't have Solaire, the fight would be more tedious, because I would spend a lot more time waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack. But with Solaire, I could have a 1v1 fight with Ornstein. And on his own, Ornstein is a joke. His biggest weakness is just walking to the right. Do that and every attack misses. I killed him, Smo becomes big and kills Solaire, now 1v1 with Smo. And he has pretty strong attacks that I actually had to dodge. And that was my main method of getting close to him. Dodging his attack and then he will butt slam with a big AoE that I have to run from. I'm actually really engaged in this fight. Far more than any before this. And I never got the hang of his running charge. That thing got me anytime I was close. But I loved this fight. Having to dodge his attacks, actually getting that thrill of danger, and the way I killed him was the most tense and cathartic moment in my entire playthrough. Artorias is the preview of what future bosses would be like. Constantly attacking, keeping you on the edge of your seat, you need to dodge and find the perfect moment to strike. A check of both your reflexes and your ability to remember his moveset. He barely gives you a moment of safety, and if you start healing, he's probably about to shove his sword through you. It's my favorite fight, because it's just a straight up sword duel. A fast test of reflexes with a little bit of memorization. Plus he's just really cool, and having that power up move he does as a thing you have to look out for and react to as soon as you see it is a nice extra touch to keep you engaged. This fight is awesome. A quick mention for Calamite. He's fast, but he isn't that hard. I only died 2 times to him because I was trying to cut his tail off for the sword. If I hadn't been doing that, I would have killed him first try. And honestly, I'm happy that cutting the tail off isn't a feature anymore. Sure, it's cool to cut a boss's tail off to get a weapon, but not getting it really sucks. And it's just annoying to play in this weird way to get a weapon. Like maybe I'm doing too much damage to be able to cut the tail off without killing the boss or something. I don't know, I just think it's better if you only have to focus on the boss. Waiting for an opportunity to attack the tail is just tedious and annoying. By the same logic, Seath the Scaleless would have been much easier. He's only hard because I was trying to cut the tail off. Manus the Anus. I did him first try with Sif. He's not as fun as Artorias, but using the necklace to stop his dark magic was cool. Sif was pretty useless during the fight, but a nice distraction occasionally. But he's a fun reactive fight, forcing you to dodge his physical attacks and use the pendant to block his magic. He was fun. Now, gimmicks. There's only 2 really, unless you count the 4 kings where you have to be close to them to take less damage. But I don't. So, Bat of Chaos. Like everyone else on the planet, I hate this. And I died like 5 times to it. One of those times I had beaten it, but I wanted to get a good look at the bug at its heart. But then suddenly the floor was on fire. I was really happy when that happened. There's like 2 attacks, that fire thing and the tree thing sweeping the floor with its hand. You can see on the floor where the fire is gonna happen, so just don't stand there. But for the hand, you have to dodge. Except sometimes you can't see it coming and it throws you into the many holes on the floor. So it's a one-shot kill. Fuck this. FromSoft knew this thing sucked and gave you checkpoints for it. You have to melee hit 3 things, and after killing each thing, you can quit out of the game and start outside the boss arena when you get back in, and that thing will be dead. You will have to do that at least twice, because you really don't want to run across that floor more than you need to, because you will probably die and have to do the tedious boss run again. Boss runs suck. I have never heard a good argument for them. If you have to choose between what is fun and what is challenging, you should choose fun every time. And that's why FromSoft has mostly stopped doing boss runs, because they aren't fun. Bat of Chaos sucks. Why would you have platforming in a boss? The best gimmick boss, Priscilla. She starts invisible but leaves tracks in the snow so you can attack her. It is incredibly cool, and being able to shoot her with an arrow that stays visible and acts like a marker for where she is probably the most memorable and cool moment in Dark Souls for me. This gimmick is why she is memorable, and why she is a good boss. If she didn't have that, she would just be another circle strafe hit after they hit boss. Last boss mention, Nero. I summoned a player for him because his boss run is awful and he has some skelly boys with him in the boss room. Anytime a boss is composed of multiple enemies, I see that as a license to cheese. Because a boss composed of multiple enemies is bullshit. Solaire MVP'd the Bell Gargoyles, but he wasn't available here. So I had to go online and hope there was a player in my level range. That just happened to place a summon sign here. Because I really didn't want to do the boss run again. Optimizing a boss run is probably fun for some players, but not me. By the way, patches will kick you down in that area. That's fun. Anyway, as soon as the boss started, I got hit with a sword through the ground. So Nero can just hit you anywhere and you have to deal with respawning skeleton boys. I feel very justified with my summon. Almost every attack is a big AoE or a big swipe, but I saw a big window to attack him and he can kill those extra skelly boys. So I probably could have killed him myself, but I was not gonna risk it. The boss design here is a really mixed bag, with a lot of bosses becoming bland and trivial after seeing them a couple of times. But then there are those standouts, those really good ones, that you will remember for years. Artorias' coolest armor and best boss. Sorry I killed your dog and your girlfriend. I didn't have a choice with them. The game forces me with Sif, and your girlfriend had the gall to ask for your soul. What I like about the boss design and generally the gameplay here are these hints of what's to come. It's good here, but you see what they will build on to make it amazing later. Come. Story. The presentation. Starting with the intro cutscene as a great display of the amazing transfixing FromSoft art style. And Nero being a goofball. Then in-game cutscenes, they are few and far between and there to either let you appreciate and get a good look at bosses, for example, or to show you that something changed in the world. And that was my primary complaint with story in Demon's Souls. It felt like the things I was doing didn't have an effect on the world, but here it does, and things change based on my progress. A good example is Sense Fortress opening up after I ring the bells, but the better example is the NPCs. They change location based on what I've done and their outcomes change based on my decisions. We will look at that in the spoiler section. I like the story of Dark Souls, and I both like and dislike how it's told in the game. They give you the foundation of the story, the premise, but for everything after that, they give you scraps of information. Just enough to give you an idea of where to go, leaving a lot of blanks in the story. And you're gonna have to work to fill in those blanks. Paying close attention to everything NPCs say, which isn't that bad considering how good the voice acting is, for the most part, and reading item descriptions. I don't have the patience for these things, and since a lot of information is hidden from you, you will miss a lot. And if you don't want to miss anything, then you are forced to use a guide, which means spoiling yourself. Or you go literally everywhere into every corner up against every wall. That does not sound fun. The good part is that this leaves the story largely ignorable, and you can just focus on the game or make your own story. And that's what people mostly do. Theory crafting. They take these scraps of information, piece them together and fill the blank pieces with what makes sense to them. And I really enjoy that genre of YouTube video, but I do not have the patience or memory to do that myself. So that's a part of the game that I don't really engage with. But there are a few moments where the story isn't so obscured, and it's a story you can take an active part in. And it will be good, but it will be dragged down by you having to use a guide to find it, or wasting hours looking for it. The obtuse way the story is told is why people get so obsessed with it, and people can talk endlessly about it for years later. It's a big part of what makes the game special, freedom of interpretation, but it being obtuse can be frustrating. And I have a rule with story in video games, mostly born out of years of being annoyed with World of Warcraft and how the story in that game is always just in a book they release alongside expansions, and not in the actual games. And that rule is, if I cannot just experience the story in the game myself without having to look up guides or going out of my way to a ridiculous extent, then the story sucks. And with Dark Souls, for the most part, that's the case. The story purely within the game and how you engage with it kinda sucks and is full of holes. But when it's told in a YouTube video, it's great. Okay, time for spoilers. Spoilers. Let's look at Solaire's story. As you progress through the game, he will progress with you. He starts to feel like your main friend. You can summon him for a few bosses and you meet him at a few bonfires. He's in this land looking for his own son. Yeah, he's a pretty weird guy, but he's one of the few people who hasn't stabbed you. So you accept his offer of working together, through jolly cooperation. Then you progress through the game, occasionally summoning him for bosses and meeting him at 2 bonfires. And at each bonfire he's getting more frustrated with not finding his own son. The last time I met him was in Isolith. At that point, if you killed a bit of chaos, then he will find his own son by getting infected with a sunlight maggot, making Solaire hostile and forcing you to kill him. Unless, before the bit of chaos, you join the Chaos Covenant and donate 30 humanities and then go to this door that's off the beaten path, open it and then kill a specific sunlight maggot that runs from you. Yeah, there's like a 5% chance I would have found this without a guide. I probably wouldn't have even known what happened to Solaire. He would have just been gone from my playthrough. This kind of stuff does encourage a second playthrough or looking it up online, and having the reaction of, oh, that's cool. Would have liked to have any hint at all about that, but I suppose it's a good reward for those really into exploring. I want to keep track of the larger story as I go through these games, so let's look at Gwyn. After defeating the dragons, Gwyn ruled Lordran as a god, but the fire started to fade. This was the natural cycle, but Gwyn did not want to give his power up, and so he stepped into the fire, using the power of his own soul to link the fire and extend the Age of Fire. The Witch of Isolith also tried replicating the Great Fire, but that just created the chaos and the demons, and turned her and her children into freaks. But Gwyn linked the fire, unnaturally extending the Age of Fire, and this consumed him, leaving only a husk, a hollow Gwyn waiting by the fire, forgetting who he is. And that's why he just attacks you when you go into the kiln of the first flame. He doesn't even ask if you're there to help, his mind is too gone to talk. He's just a creature of instinct. That explains why he's such a cakewalk of a boss. Okay, sure I did summon Solaire, but still. I'm pretty sure this is all the information you get about this in Dark Souls 1. How did I know all of it? I read the wiki. A lot of the information would have come from Darkstalker Cath, but I never met him. I missed the check of being able to meet him, which of course I didn't know about. There are 2 endings, one where you walk away from the fire and become the Dark Lord, and the one where you link the fire. I had a really hard time choosing, but I thought about how the game had presented the Abyss up to this point. New Londo and the DLC are the Abyss areas, and both of them seem absolutely awful. You wouldn't want to be there. Granted, the others are not much better, but at least it's got a little bit of vitamin D. The Abyss was presented as a pretty bad thing from all I saw, so I linked the fire because, ignoring everything outside of Dark Souls 1, it seemed like the better option. But we will see in later games that this was wrong and the choice didn't even matter. Conclusion. Dark Souls is a very esoteric game, and I have a lot of conflicting feelings about it. It's hard to recommend. It is a game of highs and lows, where you can be going through a very frustrating level, dying and getting more and more annoyed, to the point that you wonder if it's even worth it. And then, once you get through it, you will feel immense catharsis and pride. But sometimes the annoying stuff in the levels outweighs the satisfaction and the fun of the combat. Half of me wants to say that I would have had a better experience without all the bullshit the game throws at you, and then just focus on fun combat. But the other half thinks that would turn Dark Souls into a more bland experience. The game is about overcoming challenges, and sometimes those challenges can be a bit too annoying, or have an unnecessary bit of tedium, but overall, as a complete package, it's a very good challenge. And if you just pay attention and think, you will get through it without too much trouble. It's an incredibly interesting experience, and one of the most engaging experiences you can find. Art style, combat, strange lore, the interconnected level design alone makes the game worth checking out. Because you can't find that anywhere else. It's a unique experience. Pretty good music too. These games are very good at letting you grow as a player. Starting out being bad and ending up at least somewhat competent. Also, great atmosphere. My favorite example is the DLC, Ulasil Township, where you sometimes hear screaming in the distance. Good sound work. Except for the armor. I do not need to hear the rustling of my armor the entire game. I honestly think they had a normal rustling sound for the armor and then bass boosted the fuck out of it. It does not need to be that loud. It's a flawed game, but a great game. Yeah, I recommend it. Just don't listen to idiots who tell you to melee only and not summon. Magic and summons are tools you use to overcome the challenge. Use whatever it takes. I give the game chesticles out of another pair of chesticles. This video took longer than usual because my life became the Dark Souls of life. University became very heavy and then exams happened, and the last exam will be around 30th May because I got the flu and missed one of the exams. And one of my dogs, who's 10, started losing his health, and I'm gonna have to say goodbye to him like next week. It's the best thing to do in the situation since he's in a lot of pain, but it fucking kills me. I hate life right now. The stress of everything just got to me. Hopefully stuff will become better later in the summer. Anyway, I've almost finished Dark Souls 2, but I think I wanna do another video first, or something. Subscribe to find out and have a day or whatever.
Curses! What's wrong with you? What curses? How in the... What did I do?